Why, hello there, darling. My name is Annabelle from Horizon Cosplay, and today we're going to be making something based on a movie that I am very, very excited about that is coming out very soon, and that is Cruella. Now, as much as I would never support pet dogs being turned into coats for the fashion industry, this movie piqued my interest when the first trailer came out, and the second and third one just got me more excited. The whole thing looks absolutely amazing, but with a few weeks left to go until the movie came out, I was feeling very inspired. You see, with the making of my Cinderella dress, my interest in Disney bounding has kind of skyrocketed, so I'm looking to make myself another piece. And considering the fashion in Cruella is like proper high fashion and absolutely gorgeous, and I think it's based in about the 70s, but I'm definitely more of a 50s person, we are going to do our best to take Cruella from the 70s back to the 50s and make something really, really nice. So, let's get on with it.
So, the design. I saw this image a while ago of this gorgeous 50s coat and felt it gave some fashionable Cruella vibes. Plus, anything 50s makes my heart melt, as I just love that style, so this is going to be a history bound as well as a Disney bound people, which makes this extra exciting. But of course I had to put my own little twist of it, so as part of my 30 days of Disney bounding design challenge that I'm currently doing on Instagram, I came up with this. To start off with, I made a mock-up from an old curtain I had been gifted. To be honest, this was a damn nightmare, and I ended up redrafting my red pleats as well as making not one, not two, but 3 different versions of the sleeve before finding the style that I wanted. I think it came out relatively well in the end, and of course I cannot wait to get started on the real thing. The last alteration I had to make once the mock-up was finished was just to make the centre back pleat come up a little bit higher to accommodate my bum, which apparently is a little rounder than I thought. Oops, but you know what, I think it's still going to be fine, and I'm going to adore the end effect. And so we are on to the real thing. Of course, guys, this is supposed to be fashion couture, so we won't just be using any material. Nope, nope, nope. Instead, let's find the roll of stitched leather I have left over from my Kyoshi Warrior costume. I don't know how much of this I have left, but finger crossed it's going to be enough. Next, let's travel to the land of the attic. Here I've been storing an old silk wedding dress I was given, which will be perfect to cut up for the white bits of this coat. And last but not least, an old red bedsheet. Is it even a project of mine if I don't use a bedsheet somewhere? That and this red bedsheet is honestly the only red fabric I currently own, and I really, really wanted to have a red lining to my coat. So we're going to work with what we've got. My first steps when making the real coat was to cut out the red pleats in the coat lining. I did this first because it was the fabric I had the least of and yet needed the most pieces cut out. Also, if you think I look tired and utterly exhausted here, it's because I am. This is due to the fact that for some unknown reason, I brought myself a bike and cycled 3 hours home from my new real-world job 2 days in a row, and now face doing the exact same thing for the next 10 days straight. Yes guys, you did hear that correctly, but a lot of cycling. If you appreciate this effort, please do drop this video a like, because I can tell you guys right now, making this coat rather than going to sleep was a very big effort from me and incredibly tough going. I would love to see how many of you appreciate it, because trust me, this was not fun at times, I can just tell you that right now. Once everything was cut out, I took the lining pieces and basted them onto their outside equivalents using the basting stitch that I have on my very fancy sewing machine. I then cut out a long strip of scrap red fabric, which I then sewed to the bottom of each individual piece, making sure to overlock that raw edge before folding it over the overlocked edge, before hand stitching the top edge of this scrap piece down. I did this by hand so that I could only catch the lining fabric, and therefore the stitches wouldn't be able to be seen from the outside. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because of how I will be inserting the pleats later on, but we'll go into more details about that in a second. For now though, we are going to get those pleats and do a rolled hem along the 2 short sides. I did mine by measuring the size of the hem I wanted to roll and then top stitching them down with a red thread, but you could easily use a rolled hem for if you have one hanging about. Next, I pinned the pleat panels onto my coat. It would honestly probably be easier to sew these if you did these one piece at a time, but I do like pinning everything together and then just running along and stitching them all at once. And don't forget to overlock those raw edges. Can you tell that I am like obsessed with overlocked edges yet? Just a little. And now this whole thing looks like some kind of weird and giant patchwork quilt. It's time to iron those pleat seams back on themselves and pin them down. I marked the top 3 centimeters of each panel so that I didn't sew that area. Then, using thread to match the outside color of the coat, so either black or white, I created French seams. Ooh la la! Once that was done, I started sewing up all the bodice pieces, not forgetting to overlock of course, though I did leave the 2 side pieces open. Once the shoulder pieces were done, we could start to see what the finished coat was going to look like, and damn did it give me the second wind I definitely needed to finish this project.
So the next thing to do is the sleeves that Sherlock is currently sleeping on. So I think that's him telling me that it's definitely time to go to bed and I should not be working because it is about midnight and I start work in about 6 hours. Night night, pretty cat. Sleep well. Have lots of lovely dreams.
And now onto the sleeves. I ran a gathering stitch along the top and bottom of each sleeve. I then sat down and pulled the thread at the top of the sleeve to gather it up to the length of the armhole. Also, I know that the white jumper I'm wearing is a complete and utter mess. Honestly, I never normally wear white because it always gets so messy, but all my other pajamas were in the wash, and so I was wearing this one, which makes me look like a poorly trained yeti. I know, guys, I know. Anyway, a quick stitch and an overlock later, and the sleeves were attached. Next came the cuff. I folded my rectangles in half lengthways and stitched the two short sides together before overlocking them. I then trimmed the corners and turned it the right way around and top stitched the top three edges, making sure to leave the bottom edge open. On the pattern, I marked a small rectangle at one side of the cuff. Marking it with a pin, I top stitched down that line, doing it at the opposite end for each cuff. I then chose some nice looking red buttons, and using my buttonhole foot, I put a buttonhole inside each of the small rectangles. Next, I gathered the end of my sleeve that was not attached to the coat into the large rectangle of the cuff and top stitched the cuff down so that everything was attached and neat and tidy. After that, I pinned up those side seams and along the bottom of both sleeves. I then stitched and overlocked them before beginning to hand sew those edges down. Next, I made sure to hand stitch each of the buttons onto the cuffs so that they would cling nicely to my wrists and create that lovely shape that I was going for. After that, I remembered that I had left a small gap at the top of each of my pleats, so using hand stitching again, I closed those gaps and pressed the pleats flat on the inside of the coat before hand stitching them down, making sure to only catch that lining, of course, so that the stitching would not be seen from the outside. And now comes the final thing, or at least I thought it was going to be the final thing at the time. Taking a long length of bias binding, I machine stitched it around the unfinished seams on the front of the coat. I then overlocked the raw edge to help make it a little bit stiffer, and then folded the bias binding over the overlocked edge and hand stitched it all to the inside. Taking a deep breath, I couldn't wait to finally put my finished coat on. And as I was proudly looking over my coat, I suddenly realised I had not installed anything to do the front up with. Gods, I am a complete and utter idiot, honestly. So I quickly whipped up a placket, or maybe it counts as a modesty panel, I'm not really sure. Either way, I then hand stitched it to the lining and added some vintage heavy duty poppers to help keep the coat closed. And with that done, everything was indeed finally finished. So now for the grand reveal. And I mean, just look at it. Can I just say how much I absolutely love and adore this coat, and how ecstatic I am to be adding it to my everyday wardrobe. I'm also super pleased that I finally got to use the last of that stitched leather on this project, and having real silk is a luxury that I honestly never thought I was going to have. All the hemming and the binding is really even too. For once, it came out exactly as I had envisioned, and I cannot tell you how happy that made me. Also, I don't have a real Dalmatian to model this coat with. I did try to use my cat, but Lily wasn't really playing ball, so I thought I'd pose with this stuffed toy instead that I've had since I was a kid, because fun fact guys, Dalmatians have to be one of my favourite dogs, though of course I'd never use them to make a coat, handbag or anything like that. Honestly, the only thing on the coat that I don't quite like is that I feel the back could use a touch of white there just to help break up the, well, pure black of it. I'm not sure exactly how I could improve this yet, so if you have any ideas, do leave them in the comments down below, but I think I'm definitely going to have to add something there in the future.
Well guys, that's it. We seem to have reached the end of this long and very traumatic journey. If you would like your own version of this coat, the pattern for it is available on both my Etsy shop and my Ko-Fi as a downloadable PDF. Please do go check it out, guys. Honestly, I just really hope that you all liked this coat as much as I did. It was a lot of hard work, but honestly, I think this now takes the crown for my favourite make so far. And as much as I appreciate my own opinions, I also like to know what you guys think, so please do let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, guys, I will be back with another cosplay sewing video next Wednesday, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. But until then, have a beautiful day. Bye!